What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? Back in the 1980s, there was one kid in my school was hardcore into the punk scene. He had bright blue, 6-inch high, razor-thin, stand-up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc. And his parting words that day were, "And tomorrow, no more blue mohawk." The next day, the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. No hats in school. In high school junior year, there was one kid in my grade that was allowed due to him having alopecia universalis, which is basically having rapid baldness. A new teacher wasn't aware that he was allowed to and asked him to take it off. The kid explained why he was able to, but the sub didn't believe him, forced him to take it off, and was being very cruel to him for wearing his hat / his lack of hair. The next day, everyone wore hats to school as a sort of rebellion against the teacher. She got really mad and started yelling at the students and said some nasty things. She got fired. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule, and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often, but he never did. Eventually, when his hair got about down to his shoulders, the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length, and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with his head half shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week and he had to shave the other side of his head before he could come back. A buddy of mine was caught messing with his phone during class. Back then, the school rules were that if you were caught, your phone was confiscated for an entire day, and you couldn't get it back until the next day. This was before smartphones, and the rules have changed since the 10 years that I graduated there. So, Buddy hands in his phone, but doesn't seem too worried about it. He waits a couple of classes until lunch break and asks me to come with him. He's gonna get his phone back. We go to the staff room, where the confiscated phones are held, and asks a teacher there if he could copy down a phone number into my phone so he could call his dad later that day. Teacher agrees and gives him the phone. I hand him mine and we wait for him to copy the number. When he's done, he gives mine back and sticks his own phone in his pocket. He was known as a bit of a joker, so when he jokingly said, "Well, thanks a lot, see ya," the teacher immediately laughs, tells him to stop messing about and to give him the phone back. Laughing and joking about being caught, he does. But not really. See, he had a second phone, exact same model, except this one was broken. Wouldn't charge anymore, he said. So when he stuck his good phone in his pocket, it was right next to the broken one. When the teacher made him give back the phone, he just gave back the broken one. It was the best switcheroo I've ever seen in my time at that school. He was so fluent, so nonchalant about the whole thing. It was amazing to see. When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down, and you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared. Teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through the school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I'd graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day, we'd all be feeling hungry. And we were all told by our teachers that if we didn't have enough to share, we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled out our food. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally, she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share the food for the rest of the period. Elementary school had a ban on extreme hair colors. My brother shows up with fire truck red hair. Principal stops us both as we're entering the school, and she's going off on my brother. She's berating him, saying, "Who do you know that has red hair like that?" Without skipping a beat, Ronald McDonald. Principal just grabbed him, drug him into the office. My 4th grade brain was in shock that he had just one-upped a grown-up like that. She called my dad, and he promptly didn't give a frick, and months later, bro went from red to green to purple. This was prior to smartphones, circa 2002. One of my classmates was a regular class clown. He would buy brownies in the cafeteria and roll them up in his hands so they looked like a convincing piece of poo. He would then do all sorts of antics with this poo. Put it on seats, throw it at people, what have you. Obviously, the school staff caught on and he got in trouble. This guy didn't go quietly though. He was required to sit alone at lunch for the entire school year. There were months left before summer. The one teacher who made sure his punishment was severe made regular rounds of the lunchroom to maintain order. She would pass his lone seat during her rounds. One day he made another very convincing pastry-sourced poo and had it ready for her when she passed. The entire lunchroom was watching out of the corner of their eyes while maintaining an alibi conversation with people close to them. When she passed, he stood up and snuck behind her and slipped the pastry poo in her purse that she was carrying on her shoulder, and he quickly ran back to his seat. The lunchroom burst into laughter and the teacher had no idea why. Until later, of course. The dude was an artist at rebellion. So I went to high school in South Texas, an area in which it almost never snows. For me, this doesn't mean anything, but I have lived in most of the North for my life, so I know what it's like to play in snow. However, somehow it ended up snowing overnight. And by snowing, I mean like what snow looked like in the deep north and not just thin and watery. These were immensely heavy flakes. We were all sure that they would cancel school because Texas does not have salt machines or snow plows and the roads were super slick. A lot of parents didn't want their kids to go to school because they didn't feel comfortable with a bunch of new high school drivers on ice. Yet, alas, they of course did not cancel school. A little rain knocks out our whole district, but a foot of snow and nothing. My mother made us take the bus because although she felt comfortable driving in snow from being in Illinois, Texas drivers are more aggressive and the roads weren't properly cleared. I took the bus and it was like being on a safari tour. Kids were taking pictures of the icicles on trees and crap, all wide-eyed. It was funny. Once we got to school though, the campus looked like a war zone. No one would go inside and had instead resorted to snowball fights on the entire campus and parking lots. Once the bell rang, of course, no one went inside. I watched from the window as the vice principal went out to the front of the school and commanded the kids inside. Of course, getting nailed in his bald-ass head by snowballs. He finally managed to round up the rogue kids and we all went about first period. I had a relaxed teacher who knew no one would pay attention. Since half the class was missing anyway, she let us act out the Civil War with snowballs and took us outside. While we were playing outside, we all paused as we heard the fire alarm went off. The school came pouring out over the next 2 periods. Dude that pulled the fire alarm is a legend and lives on in our school till this day. He did in fact get arrested, along with another kid that thought it'd be smart to throw ice at a cop. That was the one time I saw the high school completely not have a handle on anyone.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and comment down below your thoughts. Subscribe if you want to see more videos from us. We have more videos on screen for you to watch right now.